This is definitely something I want to show you. This is the ST224 from Zoom, the sample track. If you guys don't know about this, go and grab one. That's what I can say straight away. Came out in the 90s as a competitor against the SP303. It's very similar to an SP, but I would say it's even better. I actually prefer this. I own the 404. I had it for a while, then I sold it. But this thing I think I'm going to keep. This is actually pretty cool. It samples at different rates, and that's one of the cool things about this machine is that you can sample at different rates. Lo-fi, standard, and hi-fi. So hi-fi is at 36 kilohertz, standard 16 kilohertz, and lo-fi at 8 kilohertz. If you're sampling with the lo-fi quality, actually I think it just puts a low pass filter on the recording, so it only records below a certain frequency. Should be around 8K. So when you pitch down the sample, you won't hear that distortion that you are hoping for. If you know, like the SP1200, when you pitch down something, you'll get that ring noise. That won't happen on the lo-fi recordings, but will happen in the standard recordings at 16 kilohertz. There are a few ways to actually pitch down the sample. You have the scratch here, which is an effect, and what the scratch does is pitch up and down actually. So it's just like you would stop a record from playing, it does that. So it's just a way of pitching the audio. Unlike the SP404, this thing has tuning, so you can pitch your samples quite easily in this just by going into the tuning function. So if you're using the tuning, then you won't be able to filter out some of that ring. It might be too harsh sometimes. But if you're using the scratch, you can actually pitch and filter the high at the same time. So it is a very interesting machine. It does allow you to do crazy things with your audio. All the effects in here I love, and I'm not much a fan of using phasers and flangers and choruses, but the way these ones work, they actually work in a very unique way. I think they have a certain character to them, and I even sampled through the choruses and the flangers. Obviously you can sample a sound and then resample it, just like the SP404. You have the resample function. You can sample in stereo and in mono. I mean, it is definitely a really cool machine, and the thing is that it is pretty cheap nowadays for 200, around 200, 250. There are a lot of YouTube videos already online about this, dating back to like 10 years, 15 years and stuff like that. I honestly didn't know about this machine. I do now, and it will stay in the studio. I want to have this aside my Excel, so just sample sub through this. You can really say a lot, man. I was really surprised about it. I only was going to use it for effects, just to sample through this box and then go into my MPC. But you can actually sequence stuff in here, and the sequencer isn't all that bad. You have like 8 songs, which they're kind of like sequences in the MPC, and you can jump between the 8 sequences. So you have 8 sequences, and you can record up to 8 sounds. So this is 8 polyphony. You can chop audio in this pretty well compared to the SP, and I think again this is a really competitor against the SP. Chopping sounds in this is way simpler in here than it is in the SP. this comes in the 90s before the XL. And if I had known about this, probably I would have chosen this over the XL. I think the MPC 2000 XL and really those MPCs, what they really had going for them is the sequencer. So it's much easier to record in the sequencer of an MPC than it is in here, and you have loads more options than you have in this, even though this has a sequencer and it's easy to work. You can copy pads around, you can add different effects to different pads, resample. You can add an effect to a pad and then resample it, drop it on another pad, add another effect, resample that, and that's the normal workflow of an SP404. Yeah, man, I really like this. This thing is pretty cool, and it will stay in the studio for the coming months. I don't know if I'll get tired of it or not, but it definitely adds something to my arsenal that I didn't have. The new samplers don't really offer this as much, that is recording at different sample rates. And the Bit Crush plugin, all these plugins that try to downsample a sample or try to destroy or create artifacts in a sample, they sound really digital. They sound really, you know, it doesn't sound like a natural thing. It definitely doesn't sound as creamy as a sample coming from this or from my SP202 or like this. This thing as well, this samples at different rates and you can hear it, right? When you sample it, it's not like those digital artifacts that you get from one of these plugins in the MPC. They say this is the poor man's SP1200. I can understand it because it does give you that creamy sound of when you pitch down a sample. It won't give you that noise, that ring noise. It sounds really beautiful. Actually, the beat that you're hearing comes from samples that I just released onto my Patreon that actually just went through the Zoom here. It's on my Patreon. You guys can go and grab that pack. It's filled with chords that I recorded into the Zoom and then pitched down, added that noise to it, and then sampled back into my MPC. You can even play the samples chromatically in here. You have an option to select the bass or select a piano sample, and you can play it in the 8 pads chromatically. So it has a few more things than the SP404, and that's why I really prefer this over the 404. If you're in the fence about getting an SP404 or another sampler, actually check this out, because if I had known this back in the day when I got my first MPC 2000 XL, this thing probably might have gone to this, because even though it doesn't have like this great little sequencer, it definitely has some character to it, especially nowadays where everything sounds more hi-fi. And that's one of the things about these new samplers nowadays, like they're all very hi-fi. And because you can't control the rate at which you're sampling, everything always sounds hi-fi. You really have to work on the mix to make everything sound like it's coming from the same place. When I make a beat inside this machine, or when I make a beat inside of my other samplers that have a lower frequency range, what happens is that when you sample something into it, it could be any sound. At the end, it feels, when you're putting all these sounds together, it feels like everything's coming from the same place. And that's because of the sample rate and also the output rate that these machines have. This thing is actually 18-bit, so this is 18-bit. Right, but because you can sample at different sample rates, you can then destroy the sound that way. It's a great thing to have in your arsenal, and the great thing about this is that they're cheap at the moment. I don't know if the price might go up in a year or so, but for now they're around 200, 300. Another thing, I haven't done many tutorials on the MPC for a very long time, and I'm not doing any tutorials on the MPC. And not planning on doing any tutorials on the MPC. I did a lot at the beginning of my channel So if you're interested in tutorials on the MPC, I see a lot of people talk about me making tutorials. You know, you can contact me. I'll do lessons online. But if you really want to dive deep and take your time, Tube Digger actually has a masterclass on the MPC. This guy knows the MPC inside out, and that's the only reason why I'm saying this on my channel. If you guys want a masterclass into the MPC, really know how to work with it inside out, go and grab his masterclass, Tube Digger masterclass, and I'll leave a link in the description for that. So if you want tutorials on the MPC, if you want to learn the MPC, go down to the link. Tube Digger has a masterclass on it. So I wanted to let you know about that as well. Go and grab one of these while they're still cheap. Just have some fun with it, making beats. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Take care.